Tonight, before bed, you'll probably crack a window without thinking twice about it. Cool air, quiet street, maybe the smell of rain. To you, night air is nothing. It's just air. For most of human history, that open window would have terrified the person sleeping behind it. Not because of what might climb through it, because of what they believed was already floating inside it. Doctors warned patients against it by name. Parents sealed their children's rooms against it. Militaries issued official orders about it. And here's the part that should stop you. This wasn't one culture's superstition. It was almost every culture's superstition, all arriving at the exact same conclusion, with no contact between them. So what were they actually afraid of? And why does the fear line up this well with something real? Let's start with the theory itself. The Greeks called it miasma, meaning pollution. The Roman physician Galen turned it into medical law around the 2nd century CE, and it held for almost 1,700 years. Disease, the theory claimed, came from poisonous vapors released by rot, swamps, and stagnant water. Vapors that grew stronger once the sun went down, and there was no daylight left to burn them off. Breathe the night air near a marsh, and you were breathing poison. That was accepted medical fact. Not folklore. Fact. Printed and sold. In 1769, Scottish physician William Buchan published Domestic Medicine, the most widely owned health manual in the English-speaking world, over 80,000 copies, translated across Europe. In it, he warned of putrid exhalations capable of producing, in his own words, the most dangerous and fatal disease. One of the most trusted doctors of the century, telling millions of readers the air itself could kill them after dark. And people didn't just believe it. They built their entire lives around it. By the Victorian era, an 1858 household health guide instructed families to strip every bed each morning and leave the windows open for hours, not to let good air in, but to let the bad air out. Air, the book claimed, settled back into the fibers of the sheets once darkness returned. Millions of households, every single morning, defending against a threat nobody could ever actually point to. City governments went further. In many medieval European towns, walking outside after dark without a lantern was against the law. Bells rang at dusk, signaling everyone to cover their fires and shutter their windows. The word for that bell survives in English today. Curfew. From the French, couvre-feu. Cover fire. Night wasn't just feared, it was regulated. And then there's the word that's been hiding in your vocabulary this entire time. Malaria. From the Italian malaria, bad air. For centuries, physicians near swamps and marshes noticed the same pattern over and over. Get close to the water after dark, and within days you were shaking with fever. Stay away, and you were fine. The correlation was undeniable. The explanation, they were sure, had to be the air itself. They were wrong about the mechanism, but they weren't wrong about the danger. That's the part that's easy to miss. Because it wasn't just doctors chasing an invisible threat, it was actual scientists, decades before germ theory existed, measuring something real. In the 1810s, a London pharmacist named Luke Howard, now considered the father of modern meteorology, spent years recording temperature readings across the city. What he found became one of the first documented descriptions of what we now call the urban heat island effect. London's air, he discovered, behaved completely differently after dark. During the day, the city and the surrounding countryside stayed roughly the same temperature. But at night, the city held on to its heat while the outskirts cooled fast, and the air over London grew noticeably thicker, denser, and dirtier, trapped low over the streets instead of rising and dispersing the way it did in daylight. Howard wasn't studying disease. He was just measuring air. And what he measured proved something the miasma doctors had been insisting on for 1,000 years. Night air really was different air. Heavier, closer to the ground, harder to escape. So maybe they weren't imagining things at all. Maybe there really was something toxic settling over cities after dark, and modern medicine just took the credit centuries later for figuring out what it actually was. Except here's where it gets complicated. What Howard had stumbled onto wasn't a poison released by darkness. It was basic physics. At night, without sunlight to heat the ground, a layer of cool, dense air settles close to the surface, while warmer air stays trapped above it, a phenomenon meteorologists now call a temperature inversion. That inversion acts like a lid. Smoke, soot, sewage odor, industrial fumes, anything a city was already producing during the day gets sealed underneath it instead of rising and clearing out. The air wasn't turning poisonous at night. The poison had been there all along. Darkness just stopped it from escaping. Miasma theory correctly identified a real, measurable danger. A danger real enough that atmospheric scientists still study nighttime pollution trapping in cities today, and then built an entirely wrong monster to explain it. Same story with malaria. It wasn't vapor rising off the marsh. It was mosquitoes, most active at dusk and through the night. And it took until 1897 for British physician Ronald Ross to prove it. Same story with cholera. In 1854, physician John Snow mapped an outbreak in London's Soho district back to a single contaminated water pump, not the smell in the air. It took the microscope work of Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch in the 1880s to finally replace 2,000 years of bad air with something you could actually see. So the theory was dismantled, piece by piece, by men who could show people the real thing making them sick, which should have closed the case entirely. Except it didn't. Not completely. Because even now, with germ theory fully proven and miasma theory fully dead, nighttime air pollution near cities still measurably spikes in exactly the pattern the temperature inversion predicts. Worse for people with asthma. Worse for people with heart conditions. Worse specifically in the hours just after dark. And you still hear the old warnings everywhere, stripped of their original explanation. Don't sit in a draft. Close that window, you'll catch your death. Cover your head, the night air will get in your chest. None of it is medically accurate on its own terms. But somehow, independently, across cultures that never spoke to each other, across 2,000 years of wrong science, humans kept landing on the same specific instinct. Be more careful about the hours after dark. Maybe that's just folklore with unusually good aim. Or maybe there's something we still don't fully understand about why so many unconnected civilizations with no shared data and no microscopes converged on the exact same fear, and were, in their own clumsy way, more right than wrong. So the next time you crack that window open without a second thought, remember what that same small act used to mean. Not nothing. A decision made against centuries of trusted medical authority that the air waiting in the dark outside deserved to be taken seriously. They had the wrong monster, but they were standing in the right room.